Never thirsty. Never thirsty.
Well, we had a lot of flavors. Like my first job in the industry was at Delicious Vinyl, and I was doing promotion and marketing on Loke, Wild Thing, and Young MC Bust Move. So these were like big pop records out of LA that changed the game. Those records changed the game. That's when MTV was a baby. And MTV had Yo MTV Raps, and they were playing rap.
Even MC Hammer from the Bay, like that's West Coast.
Sure. All that, yeah. All
Digital
that.
Underground, Humpty Dance. That's a Sam Fran also.
The West Coast, we had a more musical style, being more influenced by the funk, and the East Coast was more influenced by like the break beat, you know. And so our stuff was
James Brown.
Right, ours was more musical, more like sing along to it, and so it ended up kind of like bleeding. That is what kind of a lot of the commercial stuff happened from that first, you know, because our stuff was more melodic and you know, we were borrowing like Coolio's first hit. It was like Lakeside, Fantastic Voyage. I mean, he didn't even change the hook. You know what I mean? So I mean, it was like, you know, but West Coast music changed the game when we came in a lot of ways because of all the really stuff that was really more commercial than what was going on in some regards to East Coast. I mean, you know, it was East Coast had so many flavors at different times. I mean, you got Kid and Play, you got Public Enemy at the same time. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, you know, there were flavors out there, you know. So I mean,
of course, you know, LL Cool J, Run DMC, they're definitely commercially successful.
Sure.
But I just feel like, you know, that 90s, the hip hop like arrived in the late 80s on a bigger scale, but in the 90s it exploded. And now, of course, we see where it is. It's the number one selling genre in the history of music, probably at this point. But I mean, I think that 90s push sort of is like R&B was even getting big, like hip hop and R&B. I remember, you know, I was just as much as I was excited about, you know, Biggie, I was excited about, you know,
New Edition.
Sure, Keith Sweat. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like there was.
Yeah. Well, hip hop, and that's when hip hop's influence on R&B became very big. See, like all those groups that we just mentioned, and a bunch more we could talk about, were influenced by hip hop. So it was a more of like a youth street kind of like music than like the old R&B or, you know, or like, you know, something that was more ballady or, you know, just, you know, because like, you remember Ice Cube had that record and he was making fun of the station like, we play strictly R&B, because there was like a separation, you know what I mean? Like R&B said hip hop wasn't music and everything at first. And so at first they weren't with it. And then, you know, as hip hop got bigger and that all went away, you know what I mean? And so obviously, yeah, but it was, you know, there was a lot of great music coming out at that time, and that's influenced what's going on to this day, like you said, you know what I mean? It was, you know, the West Coast was experimenting with different sounds, all that, you know, all the Death Row, G-Funk stuff and everything, you know what I mean, was obviously very appealing, and people loved it everywhere, all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, and there's sort of like this milestone that I want to talk to you about that really, to me, I mean, some of the greatest songs ever, your name is in or around it. You know, like there's songs like Jump Around and, you know, huge songs like Jump Around. We could do a whole episode just on that. There's not a bigger song than that.
Is that when I was shopping the House of Pain demo, trying to get him a deal, and Jump Around was on the demo. Literally the exact. It doesn't sound, you know. I mean, I'm sure they remixed it, mastered it, but they didn't change it. I mean, if you couldn't hear that, and labels, and it was also too. Some labels were definitely scared because he was white. They didn't know how to market a white artist.
Yeah,
that was the era of when it seemed like it was a good thing. You know, so.
Well, the song I wanted to mention, of course, I mean, Jump Around's one of, obviously, but a song that doesn't get the credit that it deserves, in my opinion, and a song that was monumental, not only as a hit and as a pop culture phenomenon, but a milestone in sort of the achievement in the evolution of hip hop, and that would be Montel Jordan. This Is How We Do It. It's a song that everybody knows, but also it's one of the first songs that I can think of that's a massive hit that sampled a rap song. You know, it's like you had Slick Rick's song was the, you know,
it was almost blasphemous, so to speak, you know. was Def Jam's #1 first ever pop song. It was their first ever R&B hit, or singing with someone singing, that was actually a hit, and it went #1. Yeah, and my name is shouted out in the song, which is great. I got a nice shout out in the song. There was a DJ Paul was his name part, But yeah, I mean, it's what's amazing to me is the longevity in that record. I mean, every way.
No, but when that song's coming together, it's like, who's like, hey, we should flip the Slick Rick thing.
Oh, that was totally Montel. And
really?
The producer, he took the sample to the producer, who was this homeboy, R.I.P. O.G. Pierce, a great guy, R&B kind of producer, and it's funny because, and they did it. And then I had a Wino, a producer I worked with a lot, who did a lot of Coolio's records. He did the Fantastic Voyage and a bunch of other, produced a lot of Coolio's records. He just kind of beefed up the bass and drums, made it a little more, like hip hop, like in the trunk, to bump in the trunk type of thing, And then we put it out, but it was totally Montel's idea.
So when you're hearing that demo and you're hearing it in the studio, is that like, that's got to be a thing where you're like, oh, geez, like, what's this? Are you guys hearing this? Like,
you know what? It's funny because of all the hits in my career, that's the one I least was like knew immediately.
Wow.
Like when I heard "Passing Me By," I knew. When I heard "Jump Around,"
that's a classic.
When I heard "Fantastic Voyage," I knew. "Gangsta's Paradise," I kind of knew. And on "This Is How We Do It," it was so radical and different. I didn't know. Like you said, people weren't sampling hip hop records like that and then doing R&B.
Right.
It was the opposite. You know what I mean? And so that was like a new thing. But I believed in Montel. I believed in that concept. I was a big fan of what was going on with Mary J. Blige and Jodeci in New York and everything on the R&B. And I was like, we need our West Coast R&B hip hop. And so that was my concept for Montel. And so
he did a little rapping on the song, like you said too. He's like singing, he's rapping. It's got the Slick Rick thing.
Yeah. I mean,
he's also like not a little guy. He's like, if I'm not mistaken, isn't he like 6'7" or something?
Yeah, he's tall, dude. He looks like
really
he's definitely hooping. Yeah, no. Well, when I met Montel, I was working for John Singleton, and he was referred, and we had a label. John had a label, and I was doing A&R for him, and he came in, and he played me his demo, and he didn't have "This Is How We Do It" on it, but he had songs that were kind of like Dre-ish, like those Moog beats, West Coast kind of like Dre beats, and he was singing about driving down Crenshaw and stuff like that in his songs and everything, and I was like, oh, this could work. And also, he's a good-looking dude, tall, and I was like, oh yeah, this could work, because he was like, the music was like kind of street, but he was more a little kind of like, I don't want to say squeaky clean, but he was more like the clean cut image, let's just say, that the girls would like, that would go at that time, was more of
like
the thing.
His song would be played on like Family Matters would play it on the show. Like,
you couldn't have face tattoos back then to be an artist. That wasn't the thing yet. That
I was trying to think like, guys that were maybe in that lane, like, Domino or D'Angelo, but like Montel is like,
he's more like a West Coast, well, D'Angelo, no, but I would say he's more like Jodeci. It was kind of like the idea is to try to do it like that, But yeah, so that's why I wanted to sign him.
Never thirsty. Never thirsty.